Long ago I worked at a banquet hall and witnessed a fully NASCAR-themed wedding. During the reception they played the audio of the proposal going out over the PA at the track. It was fully unintelligible. Bzzzt gabagum remestwarum. Other highlights were the owner locking himself in his office to avoid the bride's father because he was threatening him to haggle on the costs. In the end we had to call the police because the bride in gown climbed over the bar to steal more sweet MGD after we had closed the taps and the event was over.
I'm in the wedding industry. I've been to over 3,000 weddings. The singing your vows thing is never ever going to work out like you think it will. Never sing your vows. Never attempt to sing any part of your wedding. It will not go as you visualized it. A wedding day is not a good time for surprises. Don't surprise your bride with an unexpected part of the ceremony. Don't surprise your mom by the wedding itself. True story. The bride told her mom she was going to an engagement dinner. The only exception to this rule is if you give the bride a surprise addition to her ring, grandma's diamond, a ring made from her parents' rings, etc. Jokes about sex later are never funny. They make people uncomfortable, and it makes you look like an adolescent. There will always be crickets after you make the joke. If you're going to be late, communicate that to everyone somehow. Have your or your parents, or someone tell everyone you will be late. The staff needs to know. Especially if you forget the rings, don't stress it. It's a funny story. If you forget your vows, wing it as best you can, just don't sing. Ask the officiant for help for last-minute vows. Finally, don't get drunk and be an ass. You don't want to be that guy. Plus, if you are drunk, you won't be able to have sex later. Crickets.
In-laws wedding and groom and all groomsmen were wearing a tux and a ball cap. The groom had a dip of tobacco in during the wedding and I shit you not. His groom's cake was designed like a Copenhagen can.
I was a photographer for a wedding where the bride was marrying a man with 2 kids from a previous relationship. I was in the bridal suite when the bridal party was getting ready and all of the bridesmaids had matching silk robes. The flower girl, groom's daughter, was there too. They asked me to take a group photo of the bridal party and one of the women in a silk robe was standing awkwardly to the side. I thought she was just shy or something so I waved her into the photo and the room got dead silent and the bride was like, "Oh no. We don't want her in the photos," and glared at me like I should have known that. Apparently she was the groom's ex-wife and was there to take care of the flower girl, but why did you give her a matching bridesmaid robe? I wanted to crawl in a hole and die.
At my cousin's wedding, they did the thing where the groom removes the bride's garter and tosses it to all the single guys. I guess none of the guys wanted to be next to be married, because once the groom tossed the garter, no one grabbed it. It just landed on the ground a few feet in front of a crowd of motionless guys. The groom tossed the garter 3 times before one guy half-heartedly picked it off the ground. The bride wouldn't look at any of those guys for the rest of the night.
My uncle not only brought up his daughter's ex-boyfriend in his speech but talked about their toxic relationship for a solid 5 minutes. I highly recommend preparing a speech before talking in front of a room full of people.
Not the couple. The pastor kept saying "Our Heavenly Father, Daddy God," while marrying them. Edit. Thanks for the gold. For context, it was a military wedding. It was just the couple and the pastor. It was live streamed on Twitch. And the pastor was probably about 25. It was in Hawaii. He was wearing flip-flops, and a lei made of fake flowers.
Oh, let's see. Groom changed who his best man was and didn't tell the original BM until the start of the ceremony. Bride and amp. Groom asked a guest to bartend the reception at the reception. Groom dirty danced with his stepmom, full hands on ass. Bride and amp. Groom hauled their wedding party up to do a choreographed dance to Meatloaf's Paradise by the Dashboard Lights but didn't give them any pre-warning or teach them the dance. That song is 8.5 minutes long. Wedding was at a scenic boarding school campus during the summer. Guests were told dormitories were complimentary to stay in. Guests were not told there would be no bedding provided or AC in the building. Groom later emailed everyone who stayed in a dorm asking for money. Same bride and amp. Groom chose another friend's wedding reception as the right setting to yell at a third pair of mutual friends for not including them in their wedding party.
Requiring every attendee to bring a date because she didn't want sad, lonely people on her day. Not my friends luckily, but pretended to be a friend's date because she really wanted to see her cousin get married.
Potluck wedding with no alcohol or music. Groom kept showing people his flask and bragging about it. Macaroni was only redeemable thing. When I went to scoop there was hair in it. Very sad.
At the reception, the groom and his groomsman sung a god-awful a cappella version of Stand By Me. The worst part was he wasn't even singing it to his wife. He was singing it to his mom. "Oh darling, darling, stand by me." Chinese weddings, man.
But one of my favorite memories from years of cater waitering was this long Indian wedding where they had a lot of random relatives get up to give a toast. Everyone's giving these long speeches and then one uncle gets up, goes "I made him waffles once" and sits back down. I swear to God, bless that man, wherever he is. Toasts in general are usually terrible and full of cringe. Just keep it short, sweet, and genuine. No one wants 15 minutes of inside jokes that are embarrassing and don't make sense.
Dated a girl in my 20s and went to her friend's wedding in upstate New York. In the middle of the service, the minister's cell phone rang. He answered. It was God. God wanted to talk to the groom. Conversation lasted a couple minutes. Then the ceremony continued.
This happened right before our wedding. We were set to have my now husband's family friend that's a pastor be our officiant. I am not religious whatsoever but open to anything. My husband's late mother was a Sunday school teacher and so his family is pretty religious. Anyway, we went to the pastor's house to go over our wedding plans and everything, and he asked me if I was going to center my marriage around God. The answer was no. It got awkward real fast. It became a back and forth as to why I won't accept Jesus and how awful that is. He didn't like it either. We were getting married at a country club. He then refused to do the wedding. We scrambled and found our town's mayor to marry us. I made my own ceremony and wrote the whole thing from scratch. Then the day of the wedding, the mayor mentioned her recent back surgery and just wanted to get this over with. She called my husband Eric multiple times. His name is Evan and she was high on painkillers, so she went off script there for a bit. Have you ever watched I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry? Yeah, she did the whole marriage is a circle script. It took everything we had not to die laughing. And that pastor? He showed up and watched the whole thing go down. We got a picture with him at our wedding. Him and his wife cropped us out of it and he made it his profile picture.
The minister, or pastor, used to date the bride and gushed about how wonderful she was. Told the groom if he ever died not to worry, he'd take care of her. I was shell-shocked. I so wished I could think of a reason to ask the couple for a copy of the video of their wedding but couldn't quite find a legit one.
I wasn't a guest. I was working the wedding. The bride got drunk and sat on some other dude's lap for 2 hours and flirted with him while the groom sat by himself at the head table with a defeated look on his face.
Speeches, my God. Speeches. Here's the backstory. The reception was scheduled for right after the ceremony but at a different location. We couldn't eat until the wedding party got there. They showed up 2 hours late because they were cruising around on the party bus and drinking. After showing up, they decided to do the speeches before dinner. Speeches from the best man, the maid of honor, a few parents and random people. I've never listened to so much boring crap. It took more than an hour to get through them all. So basically everyone sat around with no music and no food for 3 hours. The bar wouldn't open either, so we had only water to drink. Nearly everyone, including me, left after eating. It was disrespectful to their guests.
I worked as a wedding videographer. This is the only bridezilla I encountered in 10 years. This girl was so self-centered she kept everyone waiting at her outdoor ceremony for more than an hour while she was pampered in the makeup chair. While she's having them redo this and touch up that, she's sort of making up her wedding vows in a very relaxed, casual manner, completely inappropriate for the 100 people sweating under full summer sun waiting on her. Her aunt came in and very gently reminded her people were waiting on her and that it's been more than an hour, and she threw a tantrum, screaming, "I feel like everyone's forgetting this is my day." Eventually she comes out. Vows are lame and borderline incoherent, and one of the groomsmen, sweltering under coat and vest and shirt and sun, passes out from heat exhaustion. The officiant whispers to ask the couple if they should stop and make sure he's okay, and she goes, "Nah, he's just being dramatic, keep going." As the couple is headed back up the aisle, an ambulance can be seen arriving to tend to the poor overheated groomsmen.
Not wedding but engagement ceremony. They reenacted a scene from an old romantic film about two lovers in 1800s in front of like 300 people.
They sang their vows to each other. Neither had a singing voice. Vows were generally batshit crazy, like submissive in the bedroom, and not asking about where she was going. The auto-tune microphones were a terrible idea. Their vow songs shared a chorus and it was awful, and they expected the guests to sing along with the chorus. The vow singing lasted 20 minutes. Pure cringe.
My friend got pregnant at 20 with a piece of shit guy, so they got married. It was me, our friend, her mom, and then just the two of them. They got married in some random lady's house. We sat on computer chairs in a small living room with the lady's dogs sniffing us and barking. The whole thing lasted maybe 5 or 10 minutes. After, we proceeded to take wedding pictures in the parking lot of a dollar store, and then we got McDonald's. I made a little bouquet out of some ferns and leaves that were in the McDonald's parking lot. She threw the bouquet and it ended up getting run over by someone going to the drive-thru. Lol, needless to say, it was a trashy affair and their marriage didn't last long.
When I was 11, my cousin got married for the third time. Never really liked her because A, she was 37 when I was 11. We didn't have a lot in common, and B, she was pretty full of herself. The wedding itself was fine. Pretty boring but fine. Then we get to the reception. We were told we had to sit down as soon as we got there. Some people found it weird, but I've only been to one other wedding before this. Her other marriages were when I was little. No kids were allowed at her weddings, so I didn't think anything of it. The bride and groom then make a huge dramatic entrance and everyone awkwardly clapped for them as they strutted around the room with actual crowns on their heads. The bride then gets the microphone and hands it to her mom and asks her to say something she loves about the bride. She then tells her mom to pass it on and says she wants everyone in the room to say one thing they absolutely love about the bride. Not the bride and groom, not their relationship, just the bride herself. It was super awkward. Edit. This blew up a lot more than I thought it would. Lol. So for everyone asking what did you say and where is she now, I said your eyeshadow is pretty, because I felt so awkward and wanted to die. My older brother said pass, which made her force a fake laugh and urge him to say something. He ignored it and she kept insisting, so he said your parents and passed the mic on. She and husband 3 divorced a few months later because he was caught cheating with an 18-year-old still in high school. He gave off bad pedo vibes to the point where even strangers noticed and wanted kids to stay away from him. She married another guy a few years later and they are still together. Bonus, she likes to take pictures with a life-sized cutout of Trump and post it on Facebook because she, her mom, and sister believe it looks so real. Nope. And she even pretends she's been caught cheating on husband 4 with cutout. Posting pictures of her kissing it or in her room with a caption like oops, caught with my side piece, or some cringe like that. Husband is also a hard Trump supporter, so he laughs about it, but her daughter, from marriage too, deleted her from Facebook and often stays with her dad because she can't stand her mom anymore.
It's a tie between my sister breaking her knee, seriously, at her own wedding dancing to the Cotton Eye Joe, and my stepsister having her reception at an honest-to-God truck stop while 6 months pregnant. In her defense, the food was good, but wow, was it weird walking through a gas station in formal wear.
Giving horrible vows and speeches. A part of my family has the habit to use any family gathering as a moment to remember loved ones who died. That's not a comfortable habit for me, but to each his own. However, it becomes very weird when wedding speeches and even vows start to include great uncles who died more than a year ago. The only people who actually knew him are my grandparents. Yes, the vows. And not even in an interesting way, but just if only Uncle Barney could have still been alive while we are getting married. To be honest, our entire family is horrible at giving speeches. There's 2 brothers, one of whom is my dad, and 2 sisters. My parents can only make joke speeches. The uncle and his family make dry lists of things they do. For example, his wedding speech for his son was a 10-minute monologue about renovating the couple's kitchen. One aunt can only boast about achievements their family members have gained. If there's no achievements, there's no speeches. The 4th is the one with the death speeches.
At the beginning of the reception, we all had to stand up and sing the national anthem. To be clear, this was in another country I'd never been to a wedding in before. So I thought, okay, maybe this is just a tradition I've never heard of before here. Then I told this to other people, and they were all like, no, that's just really weird. Also, at that wedding the father of the groom ended his speech with what I'm sure he thought was an amazing joke, on how it's easier to build a bridge to Hawaii than to understand what a woman is thinking. It would have been awkward enough had the man not also been standing between his ex and current wife as he was delivering it.
Serve macaroni and cheese only to the bridal party. Everyone else got mashed potatoes. I was a hostess, so I got macaroni and cheese. After tasting it, there was no way in hell they would have broken the bank preparing enough for everyone. It was just really tacky because people were asking for it and I told them I didn't know much about it, I am just following directions.
Bride entered to Braveheart soundtrack blasting on boombox. Civil service that lasted a few minutes starting at around 1 p.m. She leaves to same blasting Braveheart soundtrack. The mother announces that the reception starts at 5:30 p.m. There is no food and no bar, but trays of dessert bars will be served. We are also told the venue is locked until then, so there is no place to wait. My girlfriend and I leave with a crowd of people to across the street to an Irish pub for drinks. A bit of a party breaks out there. We all get told to knock it off and come wait back at the venue in the hall, so we sit in the hall on the carpet for a few hours without drinks or dinner. Bride and groom arrive and enter the venue to an honor guard of floor hockey players wearing hockey jerseys and holding sticks above their heads like swords at a royal wedding. More Braveheart music, of course. Place emptied out pretty quick as people either left to go back to the pub or to the fast food place a bit further away. Our dinner was lemon squares and a can of Coke from a vending machine in the lobby. Funny stuff. Edit. I should mention that I got guilt-tripped into staying after the event to help clean up as I lived nearby and didn't have to work that day. It was the perfect ending.
I went to a wedding with my ex a few years back. It was one of his fraternity brother's wedding, and apparently the bride's parents were ridiculously conservative. So conservative that they have super edited versions of every song the DJ played, including bleeping out the word shots from Shots by LMFAO. Also, it was a dry wedding, so this rendition of the song was almost too on the nose.
Invite all their Facebook friends and expect 700 people and like less than 100 show up.
Oh, I have to. 1. The bride decided to sing as she walked down the aisle. She was not a particularly talented singer, and she was singing over a Carrie Underwood song so we could all hear the original vocal track. She finished walking about halfway through the song and then stood there and sang the rest of the song at the groom, and all we could do was sit there and watch. 2. Different wedding. They began the wedding with the groom playing an out-of-tune guitar and singing to the bride. They were sitting on chairs in front of everyone. Legit 400 people, and the bride was clearly uncomfortable, which made everyone else uncomfortable. That wedding also included a foot washing ceremony, and when the bride put her shoes back on she tripped on her dress and fell flat on her face. They hadn't done the vows yet and the ceremony stopped for 20 minutes to deal with the nosebleed she gave herself.
Not the bride and groom but the bride's father. I was the best man. They married young after she fell pregnant. It wasn't planned, but they clearly loved each other and it was the right thing for them to do in their eyes, both Christian. Anyway, come the wedding day I'm sat next to the bride's father at the reception and I can see he's looking at his prepared speech repeatedly. I can see phrases like not ideal, would have preferred not to welcome you into the family in these circumstances, etc. Just before the groom gets up to give a speech, the bride's father excuses himself to nip to the loo, leaving his speech behind. I'm not ashamed to say I swiped it and then pleaded ignorance when he returned. In the end he stood up and muttered a few words about love and then sat down. I never told the groom and I'm happy to say they're still happily married 20 years later. Update. Blimey. That blew up. I never expected this to be noticed, but thank you for all the very kind comments and awards. F.
When I was at a wedding of my parents' friends, the groom tried to throw a decently sized piece of cake at the bride who moved out of the way. The cake ended up hitting my 76-year-old grandma. We all had a good laugh, but we were all cringing at the same time at the missed cake attempt.
Bride shows up almost 2 hours late to her own wedding. Southern California, in an open field, no water, no shade. She shows up and wants to get married in her yoga outfit. The groom shut it down, and when she refused to change her clothes the groom decided to leave her looking stupid and they never got married. Edit. I spoke with my uncle and it turns out he had speculation that his fiancée was sleeping with her personal trainer. When she showed up in her yoga outfit it was all he needed to call off the wedding. She ended up married to her personal trainer and divorced again.
The ceremony also was the name reveal. They changed their last name because they didn't want to be stuck to their heritage and didn't want anything to hold them back. Turns out they changed their name thinking they could erase their mountains of debt or at least hide from it. Turns out you can't live under two legal identities.
I'm sitting here reading along happily and completely forgetting I can actually contribute. I have burned this from the far reaches of my memory. It was that bad, but here we go. Apologies for length. It was a weird, long night. My wedding, if one may call it that, was an extremely small and quick affair under an overpass by a fetid body of water, consisting of my over-emotional and violently excited mother, my ex-husband in his dress uniform, and me in a leather jacket trying to reason with the two of them that this is all rather sudden and we're under an overpass. For God's sake. Disclaimer, the ex was the mastermind behind all this. We'd been together some years, occasionally discussed marriage. I wasn't in a rush, apparently he was. Youth. He'd flown my mother down as a surprise, hired a local non-denominational minister, picked under the overpass for the charming view of the open water beside it. Nothing good or green lived in that water. It smelled and was stagnant. I remember staring wearily out at it while I listened to cars passing overhead. It was very windy. Did I mention it was night? This was less a joyous union and more the beginning of a Law and Amp Order episode. My mother is doing a foxtrot in her joy over our young love. Anyways, I'm an idiot, I go with it. It's bizarre, but I've a strong tolerance for the bizarre. And I feel bad money was spent and mother was flown and whatnot. In retrospect, I should have cast myself into the water before me and cried out for Cthulhu to take me into his sweet embrace. But hindsight is always 20/20. I digress. Here comes the minister. He's late. I can see he is also wondering why the fuck we're all under an overpass in the dark. He comes closer. I get a good glimpse of his face. He is cross-eyed. Now, cross-eyed happens. And I mean no disrespect to the cross-eyed. But merciful Christ. I am under an overpass, next to a swamp, mother dancing. Ex oblivious to why I seem disturbed. It is night. Trucks downshift above me. And now here is the minister looking at all of us at once with ease, and if I laugh, I'm never going to stop. I will shame this poor man. My idiot ex, my fucking mother. Save me, Jesus, don't let me laugh. Dead puppies, dead puppies, dead puppies. I keep it together. I do not laugh. And then the minister begins to speak. He is addressing my ex whilst simultaneously looking at both me and the water. He wants his money up front. That's what the Craigslist had specified. I proceed to inhale my own face to keep from dying. My mother, God love her, cheerfully volunteers a 20 from her wallet. My ex is muttering and paying the minister. In the back of my mind, I wonder if this man is legally able to marry us. Sadly, he was. Minister paid. The ceremony begins. It's quickly apparent he doesn't know my name. Despite introducing myself while trying to not make eye contact. He calls me Georgie. My name is Jenny. I correct him politely. He waves his hand in the air as if swatting off flies. I am Georgie for the rest of the event. Fuck it. Why not? My ex takes my hand. My mother starts noisily weeping. The wind really kicks up while the cars rattle overhead. I am straining to hear the minister over the din. He swiftly spits out the "we're gathered" and so forth. With the hairy dare of a man performing a shit wedding ceremony under an overpass at night who just wants to go the fuck back to whatever Craigslist ministers do when not on duty. It is time for my vows. I actually laugh briefly at this point, but by now it's panic. What the actual fuck is happening here? Have I lost my mind? I'm getting married under a fucking overpass with an officiant who can't be bothered to learn my name. It's at this moment both myself and the minister forget how the vows actually go. I remember first I chant with this ring. The minister looks in two directions at once and chants in reply with this ring. All of this is confusing. I shove the ring on my ex's hand and blurt out the rest furiously. At least what I know from watching wedding movies. I'm not about to do a call and response with the minister who doesn't know my name. It's done. We're permitted to kiss. The world's briefest kiss occurs. My mother is good enough to take pictures. In the dark with the flash on. The minister looks absolute nightmare fuel. The flash is what does me in. It breaks me from whatever stupor I've been in for the last half hour. I begin to laugh. This is not the gentle, sweet laughter of a new bride swept up in the rapture of love. This is the deranged howling of a mad woman bereft of her medication. This is senseless, evil cackling in the night. It fills the space under the overpass. It drowns out the cars and the wind. It does not stop. I try, I really do, to gather myself. It doesn't work. I am too far gone. My mother doesn't look so excited anymore. And the minister pulls his eyes together long enough to give my ex a look of deep and heartfelt pity. We head to the minister's car and sign the paperwork on its hood. I'm still laughing. Nobody is saying anything. It is uncomfortable. I look, and feel, like a lunatic. I'm laughing out of context. This is already much longer than I'd anticipated it being, and this is probably going to get buried anyways. So I'm going to wrap it up. Minister gets in his car and leaves. I laugh. We climb into our own car and head to a chain restaurant. I laugh. We eat. I laugh. We end up at home. I laugh. Mother goes to bed. I laugh. Ex tries to get frisky. I laugh. You get the picture. Found out later he had a drinking problem and liked to paw up other women whilst drunk. He doesn't see an issue with it. Divorce ensues. Takes a while, but eventually I laugh at that too. Life is weird, but funny.
My mom and Mill insisted on doing a stookie, a bit of theater often to mock the bride and groom by showing embarrassing pictures from their childhood. Cringe-worthy all by itself. But we explicitly asked them not to and they went against our wishes. So when they performed their stookie everyone was annoyed and embarrassed. When we finally made it through that ordeal we wanted THD party to resume. But my Mill did another stookie and we were about ready to kill her.
Instead of throwing rice, or confetti, or sprinkles, or anything like that, the bride and groom asked their friends to save all their empty jewel pods and throw those as they walked down the aisle. The friends obliged. Edit. I posted a screenshot of a friend's Snapchat from the wedding on r/trashy a while ago.
This is my dad's story. He went to his friend's daughter's wedding reception. Before coming in, the bride and groom had this whole scene of them looking for each other. The guests watched it on a giant screen inside. Update. I asked my dad. It was live streamed. They then entered through opposite entrances, met in the middle and did a little dance with their friends. They then had their first dance.
Not the groom and bride's fault, but the pastor marrying them, talked about his marriage and his kids for 20 minutes. He was obviously going for something of showing what marriage will be like. But he full up was talking about how his daughter, Kelsey, learned to walk this way. And his other daughter's first words were this and that he and his wife make love throughout the house because that's what you do when in love, etc. Bride and groom had to stand there holding hands for 20 minutes right in front of him as the other 150 of us had to listen about his sex life and his kids.
Okay. So as soon as the bride and groom got out of church everyone went to congratulate them and give gifts, which usually are flowers/alcohol plus envelopes. The bride had a pen and notebook and she signed each envelope or wrote in notebook if someone didn't give her envelope. Later as we went to the restaurant where the party was about to start we waited for 2 hours for the pair. Turns out they made a stop during their ride to count money. As they finally got to the party they started complaining that they didn't make enough to pay for the party expenses and earn more. They only spend time only with the rich part of family. The poor tables didn't get the good cakes/food. There was literally different food on some tables. I sat near our poor part of family. No meat or cakes made it to the table. Me and like 7 other people didn't get forks, only spoons. Why would you give fork to someone when there's only soup for them to eat, right? Now, mind you, I gave them enough to pay for like 5 plates/people and I helped them during preparations. I even baked a few cakes that I didn't get to eat in the end. Half of people got out after like 20 minutes. Bride called them all terrible for ruining her dream wedding, worst wedding ever, and that is just a part of the whole wedding mess. I wish I had a car back then so I could go back home as well, as the wedding was terrible for many other reasons as well. Groom was cheap. Bride was a Karen.
They made this whole scenario where the bride was like a damsel in distress and the groom was James Bond and he got on a zipline and did this whole thing to save her and then kiss her. They even put the 007 music and everything. It was brutal to watch.
The groom sang his vows. I honestly had to stare at the floor and slow breath to not laugh and get through it.
I was debating whether or not to share this story. My aunt and her current husband had their wedding at an old movie theater. It started off a little rocky with the officiant wearing full goth attire. They read each other's vows, and after that the groom announced he had written a song about my aunt. He's in a rock band. He then proceeded to play an electric guitar and sing a song about having sex with her, how good she tastes, and detail vulgar sex acts while on stage. Meanwhile the goth officiant played the drums. Keep in mind both of them have children who are on stage and our family is watching this, including the bride's dad. Once he was done, they mixed different flavors of alcohol into a margarita glass to show that they are now one and made out. My brother and I left shortly after and attended the wedding dinner that took place 4 hours later that was equally as crazy. Safe to say we don't talk to them very much.
Friend's wedding. The bride wanted to sing him a song, so she did a kind of karaoke thing. There's bad backslash singing, And then there's whatever the hell this was. It was so awkward. Also, dude asked a professional photographer friend of ours to photograph the wedding about a year before. Got a super non-committal answer, never followed up, and was shocked that the photographer didn't show up, after he specifically declined the invitation because he was going to be in another country. Had the entire set of groomsmen rent ridiculously / expensive tuxedos, which, fine, cool, happy to be here. He's having his tux custom tailored, asks for something ridiculous and gaudy, but when quoted the price says he can't swing that and insists they do it for about 1/4 the price. They do their best to meet specifications within the given price range, but it's bad, really bad. So, the groomsmen look amazing, and he looks like a clown that didn't put on his makeup. Has another friend make a custom batch of mead for the toast, but rents a hall that doesn't allow outside alcohol, so it can't be used for the toast during the reception. It was probably the cringiest thing I've ever seen, not just the cringiest wedding or even cringiest thing / at a wedding.
Bride takes 3 hours to appear. After the ceremony, she and her spouse go up in an air balloon. The marriage did not last a year.
I live in Britain, and as a child there was a show on CBBC, children's BBC, just like this. The show was called Marrying Mum and Dad. Oh Lord, I hate that show. It's about these kids who get to arrange their parents' wedding. They choose the theme, the entertainment, and the cake. Naturally, the kids were always making absolutely horrible occasions, because what did you expect? They would choose a ridiculous theme for the wedding: Australia, medieval, space, clowns, and have everyone arrive dresses appropriately. Then they make the couple do some activity or another. It ranges from bungee jumping to VR, for entertainment. Then they have the wedding and eat the cake. The worst part is that the parents have no clue what's happening. They don't know anything until the day, and the children will go out of their way to make them uncomfortable, making them eat bugs for entertainment. Everyone just has to go along with it, and you can tell all the guests are really awkward. And then at the end the couple have to say just how good their Australia-themed wedding where they ate bugs was.
I went to a wedding once where they did a potluck. I guess it okayed depending on the type of wedding, but the reception was at a fairly nice venue. The wedding couple was like an hour and a half late, and their best man didn't have a speech ready, so it went on for a very painful 15 to 25 minutes. Also stating in there that they're going to have great sex now that they're married. This was a devout Christian wedding with many of the friends, including me, were from church. By the time me at like table 15 got to eat, I was lucky if I got something that was kept warm in a crock pot, but everything else was room temperature. We were able to go home between the ceremony and the reception, but I bet most food had been sitting in people's cars since that morning. Oh. Also, the church that she moved to did the whole no kissing before marriage thing and started making out with her new husband on the altar to the point where the pastor had to say, "Okay, that's enough." The whole thing was weird.